Hello everybody. As said last week, today's review is my first review of an anime. And seeing as anime has kind of a reputation for being weird and bombastic, I'm thinking that maybe I should start out with something simple and quiet, like a slice of life series. But instead I'm reviewing the first episode of One Punch Man!
I'm here for fun, I'm number one.
I'm reviewing the first episode of a 12-episode season, so no cover analysis. Now then, the first episode, The Strongest Man, starts off with some calm footage of a mostly urban environment until...
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Turns out, these acts of senseless destruction are being caused by this naked purple palette swap of Piccolo from Dragon Ball. And, if his mass murder of millions of innocent people wasn't enough to convince you that he's a bad guy, he also gets ready to eviscerate a defenseless child without even a hint of remorse. Fortunately, she is saved by the arrival of our hero, Saitama.
You're a fast one. Who are you?
Just a guy who's a hero for fun.
Well, when you say it like that, it sounds dull.
And it would seem that Purple Piccolo, whose name is actually Vaccine Man, is even less impressed with Saitama's declaration.
In fact, he's so unimpressed that he starts rattling off his own backstory to show his newfound adversary exactly what a real backstory looks like!
As he says, the Earth gave birth to him by forming him from the pollution that was caused by humanity so that he could kill humanity off. And seeing as the first human to pose a challenge to him has had a rather flippant reaction to this situation, naturally Vaccine Man gets pissed off by this. And seeing as Vaccine Man is pissed off, naturally he hulks out.
Truly, one has to wonder how our hero will ever take down such a powerful and imposing foe.
Oh right, he one-shots it. It's almost like something about this series gave away that would happen. Anyway, Saitama is upset that all it took to beat a character who will only be mentioned again one time later on was one punch. And as he cries out in frustration, we cut to the OP. And this is one of those OPs where I'm going to have to come back and talk about it in future reviews, albeit only because a lot of the minor details are more relevant in later episodes. That said, this OP is beautifully simplistic in how it hypes up the show, starting with a still image of a fist. A fist that, via the coloring and shading, is clearly set on a collision course with the camera. This leads into a shot of Saitama actually punching the camera, just as Jam Project's The Hero kicks into high gear. After that, it all becomes an amazing rush of pure hype, which honestly, words can't truly describe. No, my friends. In order to truly understand how awesome this opening is, you must seek it out and witness it for yourself.
I mean, I could try describing it, but that would just end with me saying, Saitama one-shots this or that monster, or does something really impressive like running on water, all while cool music and animation are on display. Yeah, it's one of those things which is better witnessed than it is explained.
That said, a piece of the OP that does require some focus here is the ending, where our hero isn't punching some monster, pulling some godlike stunt, or posing for the camera. He's just walking home with some fresh groceries.
This is important, as, well, the entire point of the series is that the main character is really overpowered. A fair bit of it is devoted to Saitama just passing time, be it by himself or with other characters.
So expect a fair bit of slice-of-life moments and the odd piece of situational comedy to occur in this show. Anyway, after the OP ends, we flash back to 3 years earlier, where everyone is running in fear from this Crablante monster guy.
Not because he can kill them, though. They're just real tired of him expositing his backstory to anybody within earshot.
I ate too much crab and turned into this crablante.
I would say it gives new meaning to you are what you eat, but it really doesn't.
Oh, and this guy who isn't running away from Crablante? Yeah, that's Saitama, back when he still had hair on his head, a bunch of failed job interviews under his belt, and so much depression that he doesn't even try walking away from an unhinged mutant crab monster. Hell, he even trades exposition with him. And apparently, Krablante sympathizes with Saitama's plight, so he doesn't kill him. That, and he's fixing to murder somebody else, specifically a small boy with a big chin.
And gee, I wonder who Saitama will come across as he continues walking in the opposite direction that Krablante is going. And people say Peter Griffin's chin looks like a butt.
Turns out this kid drew nipples on Krablante's chest while he was sleeping in the park, and Saitama brushes this whole situation off as not his problem and walks away. But then, when Krablante attacks the kid literally a second after Saitama turns his back, suddenly he's jumping right into the fray to save the kid's life.
What the hell am I doing?
I don't know, but it's both incredibly brave and incredibly stupid.
So yeah, Saitama is now protecting this kid from the oversized crustacean maniac, and that goes about as well as you'd expect. Somehow he survives this. After that, he throws a distraction at Krablante's head, and it is at this point where I have to talk about something I didn't talk about in my previous video.
Now, while I did mention that I watch my anime dubbed in my previous video, something which I didn't mention is that I use the subtitles of the thing I'm reviewing to aid in writing said review.
And seeing as pretty much every dubbed anime has the subtitle track included on the DVD, I can easily spot the differences between the sub and the dub. So after Saitama says, "Stop right there," the dub makes a change to his dialogue that I just don't get. Now in the sub he says, "In this age of declining birth rates, I can't just let you kill a kid."
Dialogue which outlines Saitama as being relatively moral, albeit not fully altruistic, while also doing a nice bit of world building, as the age of declining birth rates bit depicts a world where the price of living is too high to start making a family. And then the dub does this.
If I watch you kill a kid right in front of me, I'll have nightmares.
Sure, it also establishes the skewed morality thing that the sub was going for, albeit making Saitama out to be more of a jerk-ass than I would prefer, but it loses a nice bit of information that helps establish what kind of world this is.
Quite frankly, I find this change to be asinine, especially when compared with the rest of the dub prior to this. A lot of the dialogue is practically the same as the sub, and any changes were minor at most. Yet here the dubbers made a change that just doesn't make sense. But I digress. Anyway, Saitama decides to take Krablante on, and that goes about as well as it did the first time. That is until he gets his second wind, and what a second wind it is, as he kills the guy by fucking pulling his innards out in a single stroke.
Super ill.
Yeah, Krablante is dead, and Saitama has decided to devote the rest of his life to becoming the strongest hero. And then we cut back to the present where he is shopping for some crab meat. This is interrupted by something destroying the city by merely walking through it.
Oh damn it, Matanui's sleepwalking again!
Actually, the thing that's causing this ruckus is this colossal titan-looking dude, and he's accompanied by bootleg Dr. Insano over here. These two are brothers. The giant guy used to be a human until his mad scientist brother made him a steroid serum to transform him into the world's strongest man, and now they're out to take over the world.
Of course!
But let's face facts. We all know Saitama's gonna one-shot the big guy.
And he does just that, albeit not before said big guy gets mad at him because he accidentally swatted his own brother.
That guy there on your shoulder, kill him!
Laddie, don't you think you should rephrase that?
And then the guy pummels Saitama into a gargantuan pit, destroying the city in the process. And even that doesn't so much as scratch our hero.
Having overwhelming strength is pretty boring, actually.
Said everyone who's ever played through an entire game on God mode.
I joke, but this really is the central point of this story, that Saitama is bored with his overwhelming strength to the point where he's become distant from his emotions, a point that is further emphasized when, after doing a late-night grocery run, he encounters another monster like Crablante, albeit this guy turned into a monster by obsessing over custom cars rather than eating tons of crab, and he just one-shots him like it was nothing. Fun fact, this car monster, named Super Custom YO6497Z Mark II, is actually an anime-exclusive character, as he never showed up in the manga, or even in the original webcomic.
And to be honest, his inclusion is something which works in the narrative's favor.
As said before, the point of this first episode is to establish that Saitama is anticlimactically overpowered, and while the prior scenes of him one-shotting Titanic powerhouse enemies do a good job of establishing that, they don't really drive the point home like this one does. That's because Custom Mark II is only slightly superhuman, just like Crablante, the first monster our hero ever fought, and the one that made him want to become a hero in the first place.
Custom Mark II was clearly meant as a progression marker for our lead, showing that he's now so overpowered that monsters like Crablante don't even register as slightly interesting now.
Hell, the only setback he suffers from one-shotting Super Custom YO649Z Mark II is having the eggs he just bought be broken from the force of his punch. And even then he decides to have eggs over rice for dinner without so much as a "well, that wasn't my intention." Speaking of, Saitama's home life. Pretty straightforward. He has dinner, he has bath, he watches some TV, he goes to bed.
It's pretty mundane, and that's the point. Saitama's life just isn't all that exciting to him.
Well, that is until morning rolls around, and he's woken up by something punching him out onto the streets.
My house!
I only had it renovated last week!
And if that wasn't bad enough, the thing that managed to punch Saitama through a stone wall lands another solid hit on him, sending him flying and even drawing a bit of blood from him.
Bear in mind, he wasn't even tickled when a literal mountain of a mutant man pummeled him into an abyss. So yeah, this is a fine how do you do.
Turns out the thing that actually did some fucking damage to Saitama is a true Earthling, and there's more than one of them. Like, a lot more. So many that they've run out of living space below the Earth's surface, so they've elected to move above ground. But seeing as the surface also has a bit of an overpopulation problem, the true Earthlings have been doing some forcible relocation of humanity to make room for themselves. And by that, I mean they've been relocating humans from being in a state of being alive to a state of being dead.
Something which they're very good at, as not only have they taken out 70% of the human populace already, but their punches are so strong that they've been able to take out one human per punch. Seriously.
That is, until they came across Saitama here, who decides to take them on in a fight.
It's been too long since I've come across such worthy opponents. Mole men.
And this is another change from the sub that I just don't understand.
This is because, in both the sub and dub, it is stated that humans have been referring to the true Earthlings as subterraneans. And that's what Saitama calls them in the dub. In either case, the point of Saitama referring to them as true Earthlings is to rile them up and provoke them, but it makes more sense for him to call them subterraneans, as it's a term which he knows they are already familiar with.
Sure, Saitama calling them mole men in the dub does get the desired result, but it's just as likely that they could have been stuck there wondering what a mole man even is.
And I know it seems like I'm ragging on the dub quite a bit, but the truth is the dub is actually really good, with great voice acting and the majority of the dialogue being the same as the sub, with only mild changes occurring every now and again that still have the same meaning anyway. It's only these two changes which I take issue with because I just don't understand why they were even made. The first one loses a lot of the complexity of the original by omitting a nice little piece of world building, while the second only barely makes any sense in the context of the situation.
In both cases, the dub didn't need to change anything, as the sub's dialogue would have worked just fine in English, so there was no point in changing it.
Asinine dialogue changes aside, Saitama's goading works, and we get a really good fight scene. Sure, our hero still one-shots his enemies here, but because they also hit hard, he has to dodge their attacks as well. And this results in the fight having some very fluid and kinetic animation to add emphasis to the choreography, which is not only very energetic, with Saitama and the true Earthlings leaping around everywhere, but also gets really creative, such as with this one bit where he's surrounded by 3 of them, so he trips them up and then punches the entire trio into a concrete pillar. Of course, our hero's fighting prowess naturally attracts the attention of even stronger foes, which, believe it or not, Ripley, are even bigger than the regular ones. And it would appear that their strength increases with size, as the hit that Saitama took from the big guy was enough to essentially nuke the surrounding area.
And now re-renovating his house isn't an option for our hero anymore.
And yet, the most damage Saitama took from that was his shirt being completely annihilated, leaving his assailants to wonder what he even is.
Who? Me? I'm just a guy who's a hero for fun.
Well, when you say it like that, it sounds awesome!
Not unlike the rest of the fight with the true Earthlings, which is so intense that it reawakens the fire Saitama had in his eyes when he fought Crablante.
It's been so long. I've forgotten the exhilaration of a real fight!
And this is why Soulsborne games don't need an easy mode, game journalists!
And just as it seems like the fight might be over, the final boss, the king of the true Earthlings, bursts forth from the ground to take our hero on. Except something funny's going on here, as, in both the dub and the sub, he actually refers to himself as the Subterranean King.
Which I would call out for being inconsistent and dumb, but seeing as this is all just a dream, it makes sense that things would start to go rather stream of consciousness.
Oh yeah, before Saitama and the king can get into fisticuffs, his alarm clock goes off, and it is revealed that this is all just a dream.
Terrible.
Well, to be fair, it isn't entirely all a dream, as some subterraneans are attacking outside, but they aren't nearly as powerful as they were in the dream, as when Saitama one-shots their king, the rest of them scarper, leaving only a surrender flag in their virtually non-existent wake.
And sure, I joked about the whole it was all just a dream bit, but it does highlight something which the other parts of this episode have only hinted at, that Saitama's goal in this series is to find just one more good fight.
I've become too strong.
Why, thank you, one obvious man. I would have never figured that out for myself.
I kid, of course, as the dourly apathetic way he says that, in both the dub and the sub, truly hammers home just how unsatisfied he is with this turn of events, which is only further emphasized by those being the last lines of the episode. After that, we get the end credits, which I'm going to talk about when I review a different episode.
Both because of time-related reasons and because of stuff which happens later down the line, so you'll have to wait a while for me to spotlight them.
That said, just like superhero movies, episodes of One Punch Man always end with an end credits scene, and I wonder just what this one will feature. Bessie, no!
One Punch Man, The Strongest Man, is the best starting point for a series that I've reviewed so far, so I give it a 10 out of 10 objectively, and a 9 out of 10 personally.
Now admittedly, there are other episodes of this series that I like more than this one, hence why I only gave it a 9 personally. But that still doesn't change the fact that this episode is a joy to watch from beginning to end. And while it is true that this episode only exists to hammer in how OP One Punch Man is, and that other series starts I've talked about have established more for their series in their first, this one is better simply because, even though it's only establishing a single thing, it establishes that one thing better than other firsts establish a larger variety of things. Take, for instance, Futurama's pilot, which did establish the tone, setting, and 4 members of the core cast, but wasn't able to establish the 3 other main characters, and, in my opinion, isn't as good as so many other episodes of the series that would come after. Then there's the Transformers #1, which, while it did establish its entire cast in addition to everything else, it did so by having the characters just exposit about themselves. Never mind the odd moment where Optimus Prime declares the Autobots must make peace with an enemy that wants nothing to do with peace. In comparison to both of those, One Punch Man's first episode does establish far less, but it does so in a much better way.
In essence, all that the first episode is saying is that the main character is overpowered and bored as a result. And yet, it says it with such passion and variety that it establishes so much else about the series as a result.
Not only does this episode set up the premise, the themes, and the tone amazingly well, but by focusing so intensely on the fact that Saitama is the world's OP'est man by having him take down a varied set of unique monsters, it does some nice world building. For instance, both Crablante and Custom Mark II set up that humans with strong obsessions can turn into monsters, while the Giant Guy establishes monsters as a result of scientific experimentation, and Vaccine Man and the Subterraneans show the existence of naturally and semi-naturally occurring monsters.
A concept that comes back in one of my favorite arcs of the first season.
Not only that, but after Saitama one-shots the Titanic bodybuilder, we get a card that says City B destroyed, clearly indicating that there are only as many cities in this world as there are letters in the alphabet. Something which helps distinguish this world from ours.
And that's just the world building. I've barely touched on the technical stuff such as the voice acting, sound design, music, animation, and the characters and their designs. But I have 11 more episodes to gush about those in. Until next time, have a good day.
You're a fast one. Who are you?
Just a guy that loves adventure.